Okay, we're live. Episode 8.
Yes.
Black Empire.
Black Empire. What a read.
What a read.
What a read.
What a read.
I love the cover art for this. What am I doing? This is more of an audio medium. Beautiful, beautiful illustration on the cover. Yeah. This is one I have conflicted feelings about.
This is definitely a different flavor than most books that we've read.
I think so.
It is, however, another 1930s book. That's our fourth one.
We might have to visit the 21st century for a little while.
We're gonna next time.
Yeah. Kind of like a really interesting, like you can kind of see the author evolving as he's writing this. Like it's a serialized story. It was written like chapter by chapter over the course of several years in the magazine that George Schuyler wrote for. George Schuyler, his family was enslaved by the famous Schuylers from the Hamilton musical.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
He starts out, I feel like, as a person, more resembling Carl Slater, the narrator protagonist of this book, who's writing for like a socialist black newspaper at the beginning when he sees Dr. Belsidus commit a murder and then recruit him to join his organization. Mm-hmm. And then I do feel like Schuyler ends up later in his life being more similar to Belsidus at the end of his life, a little bit more pragmatic in his approach, less idealistic, and speaking at Republican conventions and things like that.
Yeah.
So interesting guy.
He's got a very let's say interesting biography.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that first?
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, it's your pick. So
I'll
summary.
I'll outline. Okay. So one night in Harlem, Carl Slater is after work at a bar, and he sees this guy who's got a lot of like buzz around him, name recognition. He's a prominent physician to only white folk, rich white women predominantly. I imagine him in my brain as looking like a young Denzel, like extremely handsome and poised, and like with he's described as having an innate air of dignity. And so he follows him. He's like curious about this guy. So he, as a reporter, he follows him out of the bar.
He's got a white woman with him.
He's got a white woman with him. And then he sees Belsidus murder this girl and just like get in a car. And as he's in the car, he's like, Belsidus has seen Slater and he's like, "Sir, I want you to follow me and get in the car. I've got a job for you." And he basically tells him that since he's seen him commit a murder, he has to work for him. But Dr. Belsidus has been aware of Carl Slater because he reads his articles and he wants him to be his secretary.
He's aware of all black intellectuals.
He's aware of all black intellectuals because he's got a network called the Black Internationale, which is comprised of the cream of the crop of black intelligentsia. And basically Carl's job kicks off right away. He's taken to all the different sectors of the Black Internationale, Dr. Belsidus's organization, which is its main goal is stated as liberating black people around the world from the oppression of white people and white government. So in his first couple weeks as secretary, Carl gets a tour of the doctor's operation, including a jewelry theft ring, a fake church franchise called the Temple of Love, an airplane manufacturing operation, insider trading on the stock market through Martha Gaskin, who's a very interesting character in this story.
Yep.
The only white collaborator of the Black Internationale, a chemical experimentation lab, a mass technical education sponsorship, and food production that has been perfected by the chemical experimentation wing, but it is being operated in New Jersey and in Texas, growing food, produce that is giant, 3 times the size of normal produce and more nutritious, supposedly.
It's like something out of a 1940s black and white sci-fi film.
Well, that is exactly what this is, really.
Very much feels like
it's
that.
crazy, yeah.
Mixed with some James Bond.
Total James Bond, especially in the second half, yeah. So then Carl, really early on, meets this pretty pilot based on Bessie Coleman, who's the first black woman to attain a pilot's license in the world. She had to do that in France, of course. She takes him to all of these different locations, and he's immediately in love with her. Then he's invited to a meeting of the Black Internationale, which is very much a cabal-style meeting in the style of like a 1920s Agatha Christie story, like The Seven Dials or something like that, where basically heads of different communities, black communities around the world, have all congregated in New York to discuss their plan for the taking of Africa back, basically, from the white people.
And he also does employ, like, people from, like, India and, like, he includes...
different colored people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's basically, like, it's not just black in the definition we think of as in modern 21st
like descending
century.
From Africa recently.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems to be, like, anyone with dark skin who is oppressed by white people.
Yeah, in the second, in the back half of these books, because it's basically two books, one that he wrote in 1936 and one that he wrote in 1938, essentially. Black Internationale is the first one, Black Empire is the second one. In Black Empire, a prominent Brazilian physicist is a huge...
Yeah, he's a super genius.
A super genius who comes up with a death ray, which is pretty rad.
Yeah.
Okay, so Carl and Pat are palling around. She's kind of rebuffing him, but like clearly interested. But she keeps on telling him that she wants to put the race in the mission first. But they visit the Temple of Love and they see the first congregation of the Temple of Love, and it's basically like a boss jazz show with like Busby Berkeley, like dance and musical numbers, and then like this very stirring speech. And also they are tripping, I think, the whole time.
They put some sort of chemical from India into people's drinks.
Right, yeah.
To get them high super briefly. Like he says it's like 15, 20 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it knocks him out very briefly. And that's actually how Carl is abducted by Belsidus at the beginning of this. I think it's also interesting that his name is Belsidus because he's obviously beautiful. That he's described that way many times, but he also does operate like Darth Sidious.
Yeah, which is not something I put together, but like when you said that before,
his whole plan is like creating strife, pitting European countries against each other to like distract them, also from his real objective.
And actually, like I will say, this book really knows its history.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the author very clearly knows the history of the British mandatory period and how the various techniques they use to divide and conquer.
Absolutely.
Like he also very clearly spent some time in Africa to talk about various things. But then there's also like bloodthirsty cannibals.
Well, that's a weird thing.
So
I looked into that because that's a trope from Pulp Fiction of that era.
Yeah. It absolutely is.
He is actually historically accurate. Like, there were some modern instances of cannibalism in Sierra Leone specifically during a famine. Mm-hmm. But he definitely portrays them more like they would be portrayed in a Pulp Fiction.
Like a white guy wrote it.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
So after their experience at the Temple of Love, where Carl and Pat's relationship kind of like escalates a little bit, they bomb a town using thermite bombs. There's a lynching in a town in I notated it, but
it was Alabama,
Mississippi,
because Mississippi is notorious historically for the worst lynchings and racial violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a man named Ed Lovett, or alternately Lester Peters. He changes the name in between chapters. They straight up burn the town to the ground and then release a bunch of pamphlets or flyers, I guess, that assign credit to a fake Catholic militant organization, which is super tactical. The doctor's plan is to pit Catholics and Protestants and Jews against each other, and so riots erupt throughout the country after that.
And he's doing this basically to hide that his organization is like is like cultivating all these black intellectuals and taking them and putting them in all kinds of programs that would normally garner the whites' attention.
Yeah,
to use it
technical programs. Yeah, like engineering and stuff like that.
Right, because he's trying to power his empire or whatever.
Yeah, like pilot programs, technical like engineering programs, radio, like seamanship and stuff like that.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So then Carl meets Martha Gaskin, who is, I always pictured her as Carol Lombard, like a very pretty blonde lady with like a ton of charisma. And she is Dr. Belsidus' spy master in Europe, and she's actually engaged in working the stock market in New York, and then is going to be sent over to like basically do felicitating insider trading for Dr. Belsidus, so he can make like, he's making like $50 million in our like modern money a week, like playing the stock market, and he's funneling all of that into purchasing ships to send his troops over to Africa. And then she goes over to Europe to basically pit like the Allied powers against the Axis powers to start the war, which works.
And it's, I mean, the timing of this is really interesting because obviously he's predicting the Second World War, and I mean, he predicted along the lines
in 1936, which is pretty prescient for the time.
Yeah. So I mean, we had some inkling about what was going on in Europe, of course, but like, I mean, who allies with who? He's very prescient about that. He doesn't interestingly talk much about Germany in the book.
He doesn't. He mostly talks about Italy and Spain.
Italy and Spain are the fascist governments that he's most concerned with.
He does talk about the propaganda master for the Germans. God damn, I don't really know as much about World War II as
and I know I literally
Himmler.
No, Himmler was a part of it, but begins with a G. Goebbels. Like, I should know this. Study propaganda.
So then the Black Internationale establishes boot camps in New Jersey and in Texas to train the men that have been sent over by the other groups around the world, all of their little like cells that weren't sent to technical schools. Basically like their strongest and most strategically thinking men and women, and they go through 12 weeks of training in military maneuvers in a bumfuck part of Texas that nobody's ever gonna see, because like a mass of black people like doing fucking maneuvers would create attention. So then they, after that is completed, the doctor kind of cashes out his jewelry theft operation, puts all of the money that he's gained in stocks into the National Bank, along with his like theft proceeds, and they buy the ships. They name them things like the SS Bessie Coleman, SS Nat Turner, Fred Douglass, and so on. You know, just commemorating like influential black people, people who like were ahead of their time, basically, in American and world history. And thanks to the temples of love all over Africa, but especially Liberia, they've got a lot of local support in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and then also like kind of throughout Africa. But the people on the western, like on the west coast of Africa, are really vital, because then they basically roll up and stage a very efficient coup, which basically utilizes local people on the ground armed with like small arms and rifles, and then also grenades. Like they basically have people plant grenades in all of the like houses of white folk that employ them, and blow everybody up,
Yeah.
and storm the president's palace. He had more guards than they expected, so there's a gunfight, but they take the president out. And basically within a week, the international community is acknowledging them as a legitimate government because they promise through their ambassadors to just kind of toe the line, the white people line that they want, which is obviously a lie. But
they're also dealing with the violence breaking out in Europe at the moment.
Yeah, and people are distracted by the like the U.S. is distracted by the domestic violence. The Europeans are distracted by their international, like, shit's popping off. And so basically they buy themselves like 12 weeks of time to arm up and, basically do everything they need to do to take over almost all of Africa. They're not able to take, like, Casablanca and like Cape Town, and that's basically it. But they basically just do the same thing. They supply local militias with weapons, strategically bomb white people's strongholds, and they take it within a week. And that's kind of where the first book, like Black International, ends. The second book, Black Empire, is a lot more of like a pulpy adventure book, but it kind of starts off the same way. Pat and Carl are married now, and on their honeymoon, we get kind of a similar framing for the first couple chapters where they're just touring around all of the different facilities that have like cool future tech.
We talked about this. He's almost like like a wellness influencer with all his speeches in the beginning of the second.
Oh my god! And
about food from Africa
and healthiness
and also even into eugenics and stuff, which
Schuyler took a turn in 1937, man, because by 1938, so there are some cool things like solar engines.
Yeah,
love that. They tour a TV broadcasting facility, which is like way ahead of its time. Yeah, they call it a television mirror instead of a screen, which I fucking love.
Yeah.
But they also tour a raw food kitchen. It's really interesting because apparently cooking food,
or the temperature thing, where they like cure most diseases by putting people like
in a hot,
basically a superheated sauna, for like several days,
and they sweat the illness out. And then also a clinic where they give every citizen a thorough examination, and if anybody has an incurable disease, they euthanize them. Fucking wild.
Yeah.
Fucking wild.
Yeah, it got real wild real fast.
But throughout it sure fucking did, man. Like, but yeah, throughout the first book, I'm kind of like, yeah, man, I'm with this. Like, get those fucking white people out of Africa. They don't need to be there. And in the second book, I'm like, oh, you're just gonna kill all the sick and old people in Africa? It's for their own good. Yeah. They're not going to suffer.
That's right.
A life of disease.
That's right. Just like with the Nazis.
Yeah.
You kill the disabled and the sickly because you don't. It's a mercy to them.
Yeah. But throughout the second book, Europe and Liberia jostle over possession of Africa. The French very quickly make military gains in the north. And they are meeting with some Boer resistance in the south, but I think they crush that fairly quickly. No, wait, they're still around by the time they need to use the death ray. Yeah. Then Dr. B unleashes a host of plagues on European populations, which he has single-handedly been cultivating in rats this entire time, and nobody knew about it, which is crazy. They mention every single time someone has to handle one of the cages to like tie little parachutes on them because they're going to drop them from planes onto European population centers, that they must do it with the utmost care so they don't get bit. Fucking wild. And they gas a gala dinner hosted by Martha Gaskin in honor of all the master engineers and machinists in England, which has like apparently half of the like credentialed machinists and master engineers in the world, which I actually kind of buy just because of like Manchester specifically.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, that's how the British Empire really fueled itself.
Absolutely.
Was its rapid industrialization in the 18th century.
It's true.
And then maintaining dominance of that for technological prowess.
And using their spy networks to enforce that. So they would regularly assassinate, like, ahead of their time inventors and skilled labor people in other European nationalities to keep their edge.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's basically Dr. B the whole time is saying that black brains are going to use the white man's techniques against him, and that's exactly what they do right there. And that basically precipitates this extended adventure sequence for Carl. Where he and Martha have to escape the gala dinner because their autogyro can't land in the fog, and so they have to get a taxi out of there, but they have to like kill some cops to do that, and then to like get out of a trap set up by the police way down the road, because they found the murdered cops and taxi driver and stuff like that. Then they have to escape from I think they drive up to Liverpool, and then they have to escape Liverpool by plane, but on their way there they're like intercepted by the French, and they crash land in the desert, and then they have to escape the desert by stealing a French plane, and
then they run out of gas.
Crash
into the bloodthirsty cannibal village.
Get captured by cannibals in Sierra Leone, and then eventually are rescued by Dr. B and his pilots who are looking for them. So then Dr. B tells everybody, even though that they're losing the battle for Africa, not to worry because they do have death rays created by a Brazilian inventor, and they use simultaneously like plasma generated by an atomic device, and EMP rays, kind of like just basically it does a dual thing. It stops machines from working and melts them simultaneously, but it's like a combination of two devices.
Yeah.
And so they use the first death ray device to wipe out the assembled French and English navies on the West Coast. Then they move it up north and wipe out the Italian and also French naval fleets that have amassed there. But they can't get the death rays all the way there, so they have to just use the EMPs to ground all of their planes, and then they just strafe them. It's a very cool sequence. It's militarily very ingenious. It was thrilling to read, but you're imagining the massive fucking carnage that's happening. You're just fuck, dude.
Yeah.
And
I definitely got the impression that the death rays were at first very much focused on the EMP side, and that maybe what they were doing is because when you read about fiction, like atomic fiction, pre near Hiroshima, Nagasaki, before
they turned it into a bomb.
Before it was out in the world and we actually knew what atomics did exactly. I mean, we had an inkling because, in the early 1930s, Einstein came over from Germany and was like, hey, Americans, they're working on a bomb. You probably should do that.
Yeah.
You probably should at least look into what this is. And that's, the extent of Einstein's involvement in the entire atomic program.
Yeah.
But, so, in the early 1930s, there was word of this, and you see some early precursors in science fiction.
There's a great reference in this book. It's to a paper about the death ray in Pulp Fiction in the 20s and 30s.
Oh, really?
And it's got a rich history there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my did not have that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a very early Detective Comics Batman Adventure where he is stopping someone from inventing a death ray.
Yeah. So there was this idea though of you could use light as a focused ray, but so there was I kind of the impression I got when he was just trying to describe what it does is this is what an atomic weapon would do before they really fully understood atomics.
Yes, that's exactly right. But it's very effective nonetheless. And Dr. Belsidus and the Black Empire are successful. They fully conquer Africa, and Dr. B uses his super advanced television technology to broadcast a message across the world, saying that like Africa is for black people now, and any black people who want to come there should absolutely do that, and that they should also ensure that now that they are the preeminent world power, they do not practice prejudice and racism the way white people did. Slavery will not be tolerated, and they should basically be the bigger people. When it comes
after committing massive genocide,
like basically unleashing 6 plagues on Europe.
Yeah. Well, like, and also they're also like, I mean, when they are originally conquering, they just say kill all the white people.
Absolutely,
men, women, and
they
children.
Wipe out all the white people, all of them, in Africa,
children included. They say,
yeah, of course,
because they're like, then you get later on, you'll get problems. You don't kill the children.
Of course, yeah. And it's methodical to the point where it's very fucking scary and impressive at the same time. And I do think it is like what we like. I think fundamentally, and would you look at that? A half hour to summarize the fucking book, man. We did it.
We did it.
We did it.
Yeah. This is the easiest book to summarize, but we did it.
I think I did a very good job.
No, you did an excellent job. Far better than my description of Grapes of Wrath. That's for sure. But
yeah, it is a way to actually overthrow a totalitarian, like a fascist regime, because black people in America were always experiencing fascism throughout our history. Yeah. Like you can't deny that, because like the principles are race prejudice and economic subjugation, which is what Mussolini defined fascism as. But it is systematic and like brutal and takes no fucking prisoners in its application. And I do think that there's an interesting tension there, because when you are doing terrorism to liberate yourself, there is like moral sacrifice there. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Belsidus does not at any point, unlike V and V for Vendetta, abdicate his leadership at the end of Black Empire. He like solidifies it. Mm-hmm. He becomes a dictator. He calls himself that.
And he says something like, doesn't he say something like, it is better to live with a benevolent dictator than a racist democracy?
Yes, he does say that. I think that's a very accurate quote. And I mean, I don't know, because the life that he's mapping out for black people in Africa is one where they don't have any freedom of choice. They will be exterminated if they're not deemed physically fit enough. Mm-hmm. And they can't even choose what they want to eat, because cooking things with fire is outlawed. And that is fucking wild.
Yeah, raw food diet only.
Raw food diet only. No thank you, man. Like,
well, and it's like, if like your purpose is freedom and liberation ultimately, then like creating a government that essentially stamps out your ability to make choices also ultimately gives you kind of like a time limit for the length of your empire.
That's very
because
true.
You're stamping out any innovations. Like you get stagnant over the long term.
It's wild
to a great degree.
Absolutely, and it's wild too, because like the premise of the success of the Black Empire is that they are so innovative that they can outthink white people, but like they become so enamored of their innovations that they feel the need to like codify them instantaneously. Mm-hmm. So like the Dr. Melton, who's the one who's like showing them the raw food kitchen on their honeymoon, is talking about the amazing results that he's been getting by implementing this raw food diet in like small test kitchen situations. But because of that, he has taken it to Dr. B, and Dr. B signed off on like everybody following that.
Even though it was only small
going
tests.
forward. Even though it was only like small population tests. Yeah, exactly. Small sample sizes. That's crazy to me. Like, You know, I mean, that's not good science for one. And that might be like the result of Schuyler being a journalist and not a scientist. And like he and his wife practicing that diet, you know, at the time and being very excited about it. Mm-hmm. So it might have been like a small oversight in his imagination because he was like drawing from a real thing that it's like the only thing in this book that he was actually practicing, you know, because he wasn't a radio television genius and he wasn't like an actual military guy.
So the introduction in mine was like basically the guy who adapted, because I did the audiobook.
Right.
So the guy who did the audiobook who also did an interview with the guy who took all the serials and put them into one place.
Yeah.
You know, and novelized it.
Yeah.
And first of all, they said that they actually don't think that Schuyler would have wanted this book to be compiled.
Interesting.
That he actually wrote this book to kind of like make fun of people like Marcus Garvey. Like that was the whole point, was to satirize the great black empire.
He did not get along with the NAACP,
right?
So he definitely takes shots at Du Bois, and I'm not surprised that he was also disdainful of Marcus Garvey.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
He was very disdainful of Marcus Garvey. So there's a lot of that, but then there was also like him talking about. He was literally, when they interviewed him about, because a couple people interviewed him in the 1970s, right before he died, and they interviewed him about all of his different work over a series of different, I guess, sessions. And you know, the one thing they said is what he was doing as he was writing Black Empire is he was taking whatever the current science magazines were saying at the moment and then tying it in. Like the science and like the futurist magazines were saying at the moment, and then tying that into the Black Empire story.
That makes sense.
So that's probably why a lot of his stuff is kind of like, I mean, it definitely feels like a pulp science fiction. It's like a bad Isaac Asimov novel, which there are a number.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I love Isaac Asimov, some of his stuff, but there's a lot of bad stuff.
Sure,
too.
I like the robots more than the Foundations myself.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean specifically because it's more about like the humanity of things versus like futurism stuff.
Yeah.
But the futurism in the Black Empire, the book is I think very interesting, and I love the idea of him taking it and like thinking about like how far you could take it and then like crediting that to Black intelligence.
Yeah.
Because...
And that's a really interesting point because like you're talking about the 1930s and this is 10 years after the Tulsa massacre, which Tulsa is kind of like Black Wall Street.
I think,
one hub of Black Wall Street anyway.
Yeah, 9 years, yeah.
So like the idea that like, I definitely think that Schuyler was very much trying to put forth the point that there is a Black intellectualism.
Absolutely.
That there is this, you know, there's this underappreciated and unrecognized or even feared idea of the black intellectual. I mean, the Great Replacement theory has been around for a very long time. If you know what that is, it's the idea of like white people being replaced by non-white people.
Yeah, people of color generally,
which I mean, white people are a minority in the world to begin with.
Absolutely.
So it's like
it's actually interesting that he doesn't address China at all in this book because China was also a source of like massive anxiety for white people in this time period.
Yeah.
You've got the there's a like a genre of fiction that's basically like afraid of Chinese.
Fu Manchu.
Well, it's like Fu Manchu.
So in the intro,
Fu Manchu, man.
In the intro in the audiobook, he talks about how like Belsidus is basically a black Fu Manchu.
Absolutely.
Like
that's exactly correct.
Very much. So like the Oriental menace is kind of the idea of Fu Manchu. He's like the classic Bond supervillain before you get to
Ian Fleming. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Before Ian Fleming takes all his own flavor of racism and puts it in the series. Right.
Absolutely.
I grew up watching all the Bond movies.
I love Bond. I've got like 5 of them over here, but they're not non-racist. They're definitely like fun adventure novels that you just kind of have to be like, what's the time? And still is kind of the time. But I do think it's very interesting that you point that out, because I feel like there's a tension in this book, and it's kind of really well exemplified by the first portion of it and the second portion of it, which I do think the first Black Internationale feels more optimistic in a way. Like, it's still obviously parodying some stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like The Shadow, like basically just any, you know, like any Pulp Fiction at the time, but it's also parodying like the ideas of W.B. Du Bois, and you know, but I think it's kind of lightly doing it and maybe a little bit lovingly doing it, because I think Schuyler was at that point still, like, he kind of moved away from his socialist tendencies, but he was still, I think, intellectually thinking from that perspective, even if he was rejecting them a little bit at the time. And by the time you get to 1938 and Black Empire being serialized, I think he's clearly more disenfranchised with the idea of Black culture specifically. I feel like that was mentioned in the introduction to this volume, but I think it's very apparent.
He was against the Black Renaissance, the Harlem Renaissance.
Yeah,
he
was against like a separate. He wanted everybody to.
He was in one way. No, so like it's a little of a contradiction.
Yes.
On the one hand, he has the idea of separation, but the other, he's like a hardcore misogynist.
Yeah.
Like, he really wants the and his wife is white.
His wife was white,
so,
absolutely.
like, he really wants the mixing. He thinks that's the ultimate solving of the problem, is the mixing. But I want to read this quote, what he said in his own words about Black Empire. I have been greatly amused by the public enthusiasm for the, quote, Black Internationale, which is hokum and a hackwork of the purest vein. I deliberately set out to crowd as much as race chauvinism and sheer improbability into it as my fertile imagination could conjure. The results vindicates my low opinion of the human race.
Wow.
So that's an exact quote from him about when one of the interviews about Black Empire.
So wait, when was that interview conducted?
I think that was 37.
Okay, so right in between the two stories. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I do think that the general thesis of the work is correct. I think if like Black people were ever to really achieve liberation as a people, I do think it would probably have to be in a separate environment. Whenever you talk to people who live in like major cities in Africa, they talk about like the experience of not feeling systemic racism on a local level. You know, you get it's such a different like perspective. And whenever I talk to my Black friends who live here, they do talk about having cognitive dissonance all the time, you know? And I don't know how one can live a truly good life under white systemic racism. Like, it just...
Or any systemic
I feel
problems.
so... Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But, like, systemic oppression has... I just can't imagine it not taking a toll. The way that, like, conservatives react to even the implication that what they're doing is incorrect with like wild conspiracy theories and lashing out politically, you know, like that's people who are in power. And I guess they're probably just like manifesting their guilt over like knowing that all of their like privilege is predicated on oppressing people.
The colonial anxieties they carry with them.
It's where you get monsters, like every monster from, you know, in like the modern context.
Yeah.
You know? But I think that Schuyler was probably wrong. Like, I think that if someone had managed to like implement some of the strategies that he did, and you know, like create a state that was free of European influence and oppression. I mean, basically what he's doing, what he's describing in this is like the plot of my favorite modern X-Men era, wherein the X-Men have scientific advancements that basically put them on a financial, like, even heading with major world powers. They're like you know, a drug that cures cancer and one that extends life by 10 years, you know, and then patenting them. And then they go and live on a sentient island that can protect them. And they declare themselves their own state. And it's like another allegory for Israel. Actually, this predates Israel. That's interesting.
It does, but it doesn't predate Zionism. Zionism is in, like, was it 1912, 1913 is when Zionism starts?
Okay, so the idea was around.
And also what's going on, and I mean, already the British are promising things to the Israeli settlers by the 1920s.
Right.
And there's a lot of conflict and violence, actually, because the British actually use the new 300,000 Jewish settlers to oppress the Palestinians,
of course,
which is where the initial hatred between Palestinians and the future Israelis come from. It comes from the British Mandatory period, because before that they shared temples. I mean, there's literally a reason why Muslims celebrate one day, Jews the other day, Christians the other day, because they all shared the same temple.
It just made scheduling sense. Yeah.
It just made scheduling sense.
Yeah.
So this very much the Zionism stuff is going on, and the original Zionism was not about Jews. The original Zionism was actually an idea of a place for all oppressed peoples.
Wow. I did not know
It did not become a Jewish specific thing until like the late 19 teens, and early 1920s, where it kind of solidified the philosophy more into something more specifically about having a space for Judaism, because, you know, as things begin to ramp up with the anti-Semitism in Europe, by the 1930s, it becomes clear that they cannot have a space where they're free without, you know, kind of hands off.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, the problem with that argument is that what happens, they turn around and then oppress.
Absolutely. Which is exactly what happens in this book.
Which is exactly what happens in this book.
To achieve liberation in Africa, they literally have to, like, unleash typhus and the bubonic plague on Europe, and I mean a number of others. I'm not, you know, I don't know my epidemiology.
There were 6, and they were all like. They were
the
all
major ones.
Yeah. All the smallpox was another one.
Yeah.
But another thing about this too is, I think the most unrealistic book about this is not that he empowers local militias to overthrow the white administration that was there. That's perfectly realistic.
Yeah.
But consolidating all those violent militias afterwards would never have happened.
Wildly improbable. That's
even with
correct.
Advanced technology, even if you were leagues ahead, how long did the Zulus fight the British with sticks and spears?
Absolutely. And I think you're right. That is a thing you just kind of have to not think about. I think they could have taken Liberia. I think they could have.
A single nation, sure. Yeah. A single nation, well planned and well organized in preparation in advance for saying, okay, militias, we'll give you this in exchange for your loyalty. Yes. But when you're talking about the continent of Africa, which is the second largest in the world, the most resource rich in the world, and it's also the most diverse in the world, has more languages and cultures than any other continent.
Like 500 or something like that?
No. I mean, the United States there's 574 Native American tribes just in the United States.
There you go.
So you're talking probably, I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 distinct languages and cultures.
Yeah.
I mean, Australian Aborigines have 800. So, I mean, like, you know, people lump those groups all together.
Sure.
But that's like, and also genetically the most diverse because it's the first continent people were on. So, I think the idea of that was the most unrealistic of this whole book.
Absolutely.
Was like, okay, I'll even give you death rays, but the actual consolidation of an entire continent that could fit, pretty much all of North and South America together in it, very unlikely.
The way it's explained, I think there's a lot of heavy lifting because they've talked about establishing a temple of love in every sector or something like that.
Yeah,
he like splits it up into like 2,000 sectors.
2,000 or 3,000 regions.
Yeah.
And they have a temple in each.
Yeah.
And the temple is like getting them all on board.
Mm-hmm.
And the Temple of Love actually, and I looked into this one a little bit because he was very much an atheist and hated Christianity.
Yeah.
And thought that, like, how could there be a Christian God who would allow the terrible lynching and terrorization of black people? And, like, in his own way, he was very outspoken about racism.
Yeah.
But then another way, he literally, like, wrote columns, like, disavowing MLK, Malcolm X, all of these really important historical...
Oh, yeah.
W.E.B. Du Bois. He had constant arguments in life.
Yeah.
Like, where was I going?
Well, I think it's interesting because, like, there's a weird disdain for religion, also for the people of Harlem in that initial chapter, where they're describing the temples, because Pat says, if Harlem doesn't fall for this, I don't know my people at all. And what she's talking about is the, like, production values and the, like, lasciviousness of the, like, love aspect of it, which is basically just, like, slightly orgiastic, you know?
Yeah. And they used that word orgy several times, and I was like, that
they're
clearly
using
is,
it in the original.
the original
context.
use is just a big party, right?
Giant party, yeah.
Giant party.
But it's also sexually, like, tinged. For sure.
It definitely, like, the whole sequence where, like, they're, like, getting all, like, high on whatever they're drinking, or you know, and they have this giant temple of a beautiful naked man, black man, and then anyway, there was a lot of sexual innuendo injected into it.
Absolutely.
For sure. So, like, the word orgy, like, was like, okay, this is a little more
bridging,
tinged.
like, the modern and the archaic context, for
like
sure.
The in-between.
yeah. But it's, I don't know. That was a weirdly interesting passage. And he uses Pat as an interesting foil throughout the book. He'll have her say something that is very, like, toes the party line for the Black Internationale, like, talking, basically, like, praising Dr. B and all of his ideas and plans throughout. And he'll also have her take shots at, like, black culture in an interesting way. I feel like Carl is, like, his self-insert in the first part of the book. Pat is his self-insert for, like, the middle portion, and then Dr. B is kind of like
his
ultimate form, where he's, like, really happy to just do whatever it takes to secure his victory. And, like, he's sinister throughout, but he gets very sinister by the end. He's lying around in, like striped pajamas and dressing gowns in, like, ornate offices and bedrooms, like, the last third of the book. It's crazy.
See, I kind of think that he actually made him more excess as a group. I think, like, my impression was that the first, he was, like, trying to play with something kind of interesting, and this idea of, like, black liberation and Marcus Garvey and all this stuff. And then the second one, I kind of think it's, like, kind of an angry rebuttal because people liked his work in the first book. I think
you might be right. I think it's a response to the response to his first book.
Like, you guys liked this? Really? I'm going to make him so much more extreme.
Yeah.
He's going to commit mass genocide.
Yeah.
He is going to create a project of eugenics.
Yeah.
He is going to force people to eat the diets that he wants them to eat. I'm going to do all this shit and see how much you praise him.
Yeah, you think he's liberating these people? He's going to fucking enslave a whole continent.
That was the impression, because I didn't read any of the biography. I went into the book totally blind, and I read the first half, and like you, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I mean, I don't agree with some of the brutality that he's using, and I can see that's potentially going to create all kinds of problems.
If you live in a lynching context, maybe you're willing
exactly.
to
Like, it's easy for me, white 21st century guy, to say, like, don't be brutal, right? But then he gets into the second one, and I was just like, there was passages, and I was kind of, like, a little sick to my stomach.
Me too. Absolutely.
And I was like, am I supposed to like this? What is this?
Yeah.
And then reading his direct quote that I just read, I was like, oh, that's what he's kind of like, he's kind of mocking his own readership.
I think he is. And I think part of the initial, like, desire to write the first the like Black Internationale was based on like like an underwhelming response to his first novel, Black No More. Which is, I think, it's probably more thoughtful, and I would probably agree with it more because that was written when he was in his more socialistic phase, and that's about it's basically like a plot from Lovecraft Country, which I also have up there, about someone who is able to change the color of their skin.
Well, it reminded me of Passing, because I didn't read, obviously I didn't read Black No More, but I read a little description of it, and I was like, it kind of is like Nell Larson's book that we covered.
It's absolutely, I think it's like a 30s version of, like, with a sort of sci-fi.
With sci-fi
edge, to that one.
Right, it's like, what would happen to racism if all the people were suddenly the same skin color?
I think it maybe is like a less subtle version of what she was doing.
Right.
Because it's like about someone who is very visibly Black for like the first portion of their life, and then can choose through a science fiction technology to look white, not just pass as white, but to look very white. And what would that experience be? I'm actually very interested to read that.
It's reverse Get Out.
Absolutely, yeah. But there's a great chapter or two in Lovecraft Country where a girl, through like Lovecraftian magical way, can basically achieve that, something like that. Yeah, she opens a box or some shit like that. I forget now. I read that book like 10 years ago, but she can pass as white, and she's sort of like a character that kind of is between the two worlds. I think she can basically turn it on and off or something like that, which is pretty cool. But yeah, man, it was an interesting book. I think I would recommend it for someone who's really interested in experiencing pulp fiction and a lot of pulp fiction tropes all kind of assembled together. You could read this and you wouldn't really have to read a lot of Earl Stanley Gardner or any of the shadow pulps or the Phantom cartoon serials or anything like that.
It also does fit into the build up to what we consider to be Afrofuturism too.
I think it's one of the early installments.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It definitely. I mean, there's stuff in what's the one? There's one from 1870 or 1880 that's the first.
Yeah,
but it's kind of like reading Lucian's A True Story from 2nd century Greece.
Yeah,
that is technically science fiction.
Yeah,
but it's very much a precursor in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
So you don't really get science fiction until...
Yeah, they sail a boat into the sky in that one.
Right. Yeah, you don't really get the real progenitors of science fiction until the 16th and 17th and 18th centuries. Yeah. And then, of course, Mary Shelley in the 19th century.
Yeah, and then Jules Verne and all those guys.
Yeah, right. But so it's kind of like a precursor to that, and I think when you talk about a lot of fiction from that time, the one thing that he does really well is paint an optimistic picture of being Black.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why Black Internationale was so appealing to so many people.
Absolutely.
Probably the very people he was railing on in the Harlem Renaissance were the very people who were wow, listen to all these the things that Black people could do if they just put their mind to it. That's the kind of narrative he puts forth in the first one, and the second one I really feels like he kind of shits on it.
I do too, and I love that you had that, because I feel like I had that idea kind of bobbling around in the back of my mind, but I read them so close together. I think I finished Black Internationale and then started Black Empire in the same afternoon. Mm-hmm. And
me too.
They flowed together kind of well, but there is a vibe shift.
There is a vibe shift
in between them.
Yeah.
And when Pat is taking Carl around in Black Internationale and showing him all of the projects that they're working on, they're all
cool.
They're all very fucking cool.
The unique development of solar power.
Sun engines, man.
Sun engines that would build these big sand batteries. That, I mean, actually, there's some degree of realishness in some of what he's talking about. The improving food system, improving education and technical vocation.
Soilless
people,
gardening, man.
Like soilless gardening, like hydroponics, all kinds of really cool stuff. And it's like, it's all in the first book, it's all really cool technologies, and in the second, it's all really terrible, violent technologies.
Yeah,
like
television.
Like, well, yeah, and the irony of the whole thing. What's the first world broadcast? What's the first broadcast ever in history is Adolf Hitler. Yeah, and he writes this before Hitler does that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like a fascist guy.
Fuck, dude, that's crazy. Man,
to show off superior German technology.
Absolutely.
And that's what Belsidus does.
Yes.
Or Belsidius.
No, yeah, Belsidius. We should call him.
Belsidius.
He is definitely fucking Darth Sidious. I actually have one of my sections titled that. Dr. Belsidious or Darth Sidious. But there's also, he makes an interesting observation in like the early cabal meeting that he has with all the people from like different, you know, realms of black and color, like, you know, people of color.
Yeah.
Where he talks about educating people so that you can more easily control them because people will believe what they read. And it's a very cynical statement, but it's also exactly fucking right.
Well, you know, and I was just thinking about everything that has been going on in the last several weeks in general, and it was like, he says at one point in the middle of that meeting, they're like, what about the masses? And he's like, the masses will believe anything that you shout loud enough and often enough.
Yes.
And you're just like, jeez.
Fuck, he's right.
That's
because now you got like Ezra Klein coming out and being like, Charlie Kirk was doing politics right, and I'm like, fuck
that one statement made I kind of liked.
Years ago,
and I'm just like, what? But no one should be assassinated. No one should be, like, political violence is stupid.
Yes.
It never solves any issues. Ever. Never. It's never made things better. Not once ever in history. Not one goddamn time. Yeah. Not one goddamn time. But, like, why are we whitewashing what that motherfucker was saying?
Seriously, man.
He's literally responsible for creating the list to have professors fired.
Absolutely.
Which is, like, the most anti-free speech thing you can possibly do.
Completely, yeah, absolutely.
He is basically an advocate for clear fascism.
Yes.
And yet
he was a fascist.
And it's like, yeah, okay, he had conversations on college campuses. So what?
So the fuck what, man? He would have conversations on college campuses, but if he ever was disinvited from one college campus, he would fucking burn that shit to the ground, man.
He would make sure people got fired.
Roast them and dox the shit out of them. He would have his like followers do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was the biggest anti-free speech guy out there. And I mean, you've got fuckers in the New York Times calling him like a good political, you know, someone who engaged in politics correctly. And it's, it makes me so mad I can barely even talk.
I know. And
I've been telling you, man. I've been telling you abundance is bullshit, you know.
Okay, well, you know, eventually people show their true colors.
Exactly. As soon as they get a fucking New York Times sponsored podcast.
That's right. Is that going to happen to us when we get our New York?
Oh, I'm selling it. Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think they would.
No, they don't want to talk to us. But I do think that I think Schuyler was pretty prescient in a lot of ways. I think he was also cynical, and he clearly had some issues with black culture, which is...
It just really reminds you the complexity of people's political viewpoints that they can have.
Yes.
You can have two people with the exact same experience. Mm-hmm. He was homeless before he got into socialism, and then hated socialism. So then he got into like being uber capitalist libertarian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So it's like you can have two people with the exact same.
It's a very Randian arc, I think. I mean, she also benefited from welfare and was able to write like libertarian screeds whilst, you know, on the dole.
Sucking the tit of the state.
Absolutely.
I mean, she died on welfare. At the same time, she was still ranting about welfare, that she was literally having her food stamps and eating it too, right?
Yeah, well said.
We should make a shirt out of that. Having your food stamps and eating it too.
Just Ayn Rand eating food stamps.
Yeah, that's probably someone we probably will not read.
I don't think so. I mean, this is as close as we're going to come to that.
Yeah. Probably.
I mean, you know what? I read the précis of it, and I was like, "This sounds really fucking interesting." I think
it was interesting,
like it. And I did like some of it, and it was all very interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, the whole point of doing this podcast is to like think about the complexities of power and resistance.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, he gives you a picture of power and resistance.
Absolutely.
And I don't necessarily agree with like most of what he says.
Yeah.
Especially in the second half.
Yeah.
But like, it's still an interesting conversation to be had by reading this book.
I do, and I think that the closest that Black communities ever come to self-determination is when they're willing to embrace innovative ideas and technologies and community. And that is the essence of what he's doing at the beginning of the book, is I think, fostering that.
And I think the legacy of this
and whilst robbing white people, which I approve of.
Yeah, well, rich people in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the legacy of this is Wakanda.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I think that's exactly
regardless
right.
of what Schuyler's intention were. I mean, Black Panther,
a secret Afrofuturist state in Africa.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And so, I mean, you know, regardless of his intentions, I mean, this is one of those things, right? When you put art out into the world, it's out of your hands.
Absolutely.
People can interpret it however they want. And that's why, like, it's really interesting because we live in this age where authors and musicians and all these people are on social media.
Yeah.
And they're, like, trying to tell you what their thing is about. And it's almost, like, so much better that the artist's life was private. Because most famous authors or artists in general are deeply problematic.
Absolutely.
We were making jokes about Tom Cruise before we got on, for example.
I think he's an amazing actor, but I would not want to be in a room with him. I want to watch his movies, and that's it. You know? Same with any famo. Like, I don't follow famous people on social media because I don't want to know what they get up to. Either it's going to make me mad because they have too much wealth and privilege, or it's going to make me mad because they're like weird racists or something like that. Or sex pests, probably. Yeah. Or some bullshit.
Sex pest is the most common, I think.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Sex pests.
Yeah, because that's what humans want to do with their power. Get fucked, you know?
So then it's like the art no longer belongs to the artist. It belongs to the world, and the world does what it wants with it.
That's what the theory of death of the author is supposed to explore.
Right,
is like taking the author out of the context of the art itself. Not like breaking up with the author because you don't like their politics now. Yeah. You know? Well, which is how people talk about it a lot because of fucking Rowling.
Yeah.
And one of the worst people in the world.
Yeah, she's just terrible.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, reading those books, they're all about love and friendship and working together to some degree. I mean...
It's about how, like, slavery is excusable, I think.
Well, yeah. To some degree, yeah, there's that too.
And how, like, the rich probably shouldn't buy their friends new wands. They should just wait until their friends come into lottery money to get a new wand, and their family can go on, like, vacation to Egypt or some shit like that.
Yeah. But there are some themes in there that, like, if you're reading as a kid, and you're a kid who is particularly bullied all the time, and, like, seeing how friends overcome stuff, you can see.
It is a safe and cozy space.
Right, it's a safe and cozy space for people. Yeah. And then she goes and you know, all the transgender stuff, but people never talk about what she did to the Native Americans first. Which is a whole other thing.
Whole thing, man. No, I think you're probably right. I think this might have been an inspiration for Wakanda. I don't think that Stan Lee ever read this, but I can actually see Jack Kirby reading it when he was a kid.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and even if you don't know of it directly, I was like, I've heard of the Black Internationale before.
Yeah.
Whether or not when I started reading the book and I was like, Black Internationale, where is that from? And I think there's I feel like it's Rage Against the Machine has a mention of it or something.
I would absolutely believe that they have read this book.
Yes. So like it's out there in the world, and it has influenced people, and all it takes is for one person to have some affiliation with it to like spread down the line.
Yeah.
So, you know,
true.
It's just it's so important to play with ideas, and I think the power of futurism in general, because I'm big into sci-fi, like
Yeah,
I'm a
you
sci-fi author.
Yeah.
You know, I'm working on a standalone sci-fi novel on top of my series right now, and like for me, like the whole idea of like how can we imagine the future better
Yeah.
is so important, because what
Absolutely.
we imagine matters.
Yeah.
If we and the problem of our age is that we become a bunch of narcissists and pessimists and nihilists, and we've lost all hope. It's, the climate change is going to burn us all anyway. Yeah, it is if you think like that.
Absolutely.
You got to sit down and think about it. And you know, for all the ways I disagree with this, he was thinking of like, how can black people meet their potential in an age of lynching and the KKK and terrible like fascist type violence against black people? Like, how can they imagine a better future? Like, and he didn't agree with like, you know, I mean, one of the greatest philosophers and historians of all time, which is W.E.B. Du Bois.
1,000%, yeah.
He didn't agree with him at all, but he did offer another vision or another possibility, whether he was being like...
And he engaged with him, too.
And he engaged with him.
You know?
Like, and that's... You actually engage with the people you like in a respectful manner and try to understand one another.
Or dislike, as it were.
Or dislike. Yeah. That's good political discourse. Not this blaming people, blaming all the mass shooters in the world are transgender or all this other stuff. Like
Charlie Kirk never once engaged in a debate in good faith.
No good faith debate of any kind. His job was there to be right.
Yeah.
A true debate in good faith means that you're sitting down and you're going to share your views and you're going to try to learn about your opponent.
And you're willing to concede a point if someone makes a good point.
Yes. If you're not willing to concede a point when the evidence and argument has been presented in a really thoughtful way, then you're not there to debate. You're there to be right.
Exactly.
And Charlie Kirk never was there to debate. He was always there to be right.
Yeah.
Always.
And if he lost a debate, he would just cry about it.
Yeah.
You know? And that is shitty. You know, I think this is a better example of a conservative thinker engaging in optimism, which is not something that conservative people want to do.
At least not
because
recently.
Change is antithetical to their political position.
Well, yeah, what is conservatism but to conserve the status quo of the political system that you live in?
Exactly.
I mean, the idea of conservatism is to stagnate, to prevent change.
Yeah.
Which is why you never have a conservative government that lasts very long without some serious problems.
Authoritarianism, absolutely.
Right. They tend to implode on themselves, if not in one generation, then usually 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then you have, you know, the progressives come in you have to have a balance in some ways between the two, because you need to maintain some systems that work.
Absolutely.
You can't just burn everything down and expect things to be...
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think that the era that we're in right now feels very scary, because it seems like fascism is like really gaining ground, like popular ground.
It's because we're all scared of the internet and social media.
But we've had so many innovations in our lifetime that there's going to be... this is what happened. So the early 20th century was also a time of like massive technological innovation. Massive. And so for like the first 50 years of it, like things just kept coming. You know, you had like radio being popularized, and then you had like home entertainment for the first time that was like broadcast to you.
You had telephones.
Radio, like sound recording that you could buy and own, which must have been crazy to people. Like a record? Are you fucking kidding me?
Yep.
And then within like another 20 years, you had like cars everywhere and like movies everywhere that were like really high quality, and you had TV everywhere.
And let's not forget all the weapons.
And
all the
weapons.
Innovations of tanks and submarines and bombs and machine guns.
You had blimps for 20 years.
We should bring those back.
I fucking want to, man. I want to ride a blimp so bad.
An airship. I want to sail the world in an airship.
Me fucking too. Final Fantasy for me, please.
Or, Ministry of the Future, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But you also had like a rise in conservatism. It starting in the late 20s, early 30s, lasting throughout the 50s. You know, like you had an era of like such societal oppression where like if you spoke out of turn in the late 40s, if you had been persuaded by socialist tracts in the 20s or 30s and had gone to a meeting and people found out about it 20 years later, you would lose your job.
Yeah.
It was so fucking... The surveillance state was crazy in the 50s.
Well, and the rise of surveillance state really begins in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
It wasn't really technologically possible until the 20th century.
And so, like, I don't know, man. I think that we're experiencing another inflection point like the 30s or 40s right now. Not as far as wars go, although I don't know, maybe, you know.
What happened with Poland last week?
Fuck, what happened last week?
You're not paying attention.
I'm not. No, I don't pay attention to the news. It's very sad.
Russia sent a whole bunch of drones and they had to shoot them down.
Whoa!
Anyway.
What?
Yeah. So,
all right. So there you go. But yeah, even if we don't have a world war, I think we are experiencing a period of voluntary like self-monitoring and self-censoring like we had in the early 50s.
Yeah.
Which
Red Scare
times, exactly, where people were so willing to conform because it was scary. Like the idea of being caught non-conformant was very scary. Whether it was losing your job or going to jail or whatever. Like you were basically you could go to jail for being an enemy of the state just for someone accusing you of being a communist.
Yeah.
You know, that's what actual witch hunts are. Yeah. Witch hunts are not people criticizing you online like the president would have you believe.
Or a lot of people would have you believe.
Well, sure.
Left and right, actually.
Yeah, sure. But mostly it is like someone can take what you have because they accuse you of being an enemy of the state.
Yeah.
And that's very scary. So I understand why people capitulated. I would like to think that I would not do that in those circumstances. I guess we'll see. Because, you know, we have a podcast where we talk about fighting fascism. But, yeah, that I think is the direction that we're headed in socially and, like, you know, societally. There was also a rash of assassinations in the early 20th century, like the late 19th century and early 20th century.
Oh,
like, assassinations were on trend, I guess, is how you would describe it back then. And they seem to be now as well.
Yeah. I mean, you get spikes of political violence, and not that political violence has ever gone away, by the way. That's such a fucking myth.
Yeah.
Political violence has been a feature of American life since day one, since, like, before we were actually a country.
Yeah.
So, like, but there are definitely peaks and valleys.
Trauma was a very good example of political.
Yeah, so.
But, you know, so it was, you know... Like,
January 6th?
January 6th, but no, I'm talking about, like, you know, I mean, like, heads of state would be assassinated in Europe all the time.
Yeah, which is what started the First
World War. And then, like, civil rights leaders were assassinated left and right in the mid-20th century in America.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. Civil rights of all stripes, right? You know, it doesn't matter if you were gay rights or Native American rights or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, I don't know, I mean, it was an interesting read.
Sure was.
It wasn't, I mean, the good thing about doing podcasts with someone, this is probably not a book I would have picked up on my own.
Yeah.
You know, so just like...
Yeah, I did, because I was like, that's kind of that's kind of crazy.
Just like you probably may not have picked up Ministry of the Future.
I definitely would not have.
Right. So that's the fun thing about it's kind of like our own little mini book club. So
it's definitely a book club.
It's definitely a book club, yeah. Yeah, and so all of you, no comments this time. We had one last time. We had one last time. You gotta comment in here. You know, otherwise we're gonna ramble for like the last 10 minutes like we've just been doing, right?
That's right.
So so next time we are going to actually step into the 21st century for the second time.
Only the second time.
We're going to be reading Iron Widow by Siren J. Zhao.
Yeah.
And
it's a book my wife recommended.
Yeah, his wife recommended it, and she told me like twice about it, and then I like Googled it, and I was like, that sounds really interesting. It's about Chinese empire and mechs.
Yeah.
So,
sounds good. little warning. I think it might be the first of a series. So there might not be a definitive end to it, but I think it's, you know, she said it's a very good example of what we like to talk about on here. So.
Yeah. So we're going to check it out next time and join us. And then after that, what are we doing for Halloween?
Oh, for Halloween, I think we're doing Frankenstein.
We're doing Frankenstein, but we're doing the original.
Yes. More radical Frankenstein.
More radical Frankenstein, the 1818 edition.
The 1818 edition where Mary Shelley really channels her parents' political ideas into what she's talking about.
Which I've never read that one.
I haven't either. I'm excited.
I've only read the 1836 edition.
Which is one of my all-time favorite books.
So, if you are listening on Resistance Reads, and we have almost 200 listens down now. So if you're one of our listeners, definitely you can read these books along with us. Treat it like a book club and join in, and we'll be happy to field your questions or comments as best we can. Obviously, sincere comments, you know.
I think I just wanted to say the 1818 edition. I've seen it in several bookshops recently. It was I had not seen it before this summer. I think it might be very recently published.
Yeah. 3.
Okay,
it was
there you go.
At least the one that I bought was 2023.
Sure. Just keep your eyes peeled and, you know, like, visit your local bookshop and help them out.
Yep.
You know?
Support local bookstores because they're like a hub of important community activity.
Absolutely.
All right. See you next time.
Bye, guys. 75 minutes.
I know.
Look at that.
We even got a little rambly at the